we learn to use our human technology that we've been given, which is really powerful, we can consciously choose how we show up in our lives and the impact that we have on everyone around us. And when a mother does that for her family, it literally transforms the opportunities really available to her children. As mothers setting the energetic tone for our family. And actually, when we're in radiance, you can see it and you can feel it. And, the science of brain to brain synchrony is our children will then start in training to where we are.
Hi, everyone. Today's guest is Julia Black. She is the founder of Lights On Learning. When Julia's 9-year-old daughter was so disheartened and bored at school, it sparked Julia on a mission to reimagine education and unlock children's potential by helping them learn through their strengths. She's a social entrepreneur. She's a master neuro coach and a mother of 2. Julia combines deep expertise in human potential with a lived experience of parenting. She's passionate about giving parents the tools to become phenomenal leaders, raising children who are happy by choice, not circumstance. Through Lights On, Julia is on a mission to bring this transformative approach into 10 million homes around the world. So I'm here to help her. Julia is also the author of the book Lights On Learning. In this episode, we talked about her framework of lights on and lights off. We break that down. And we talk about how we can use that in our homes for ourselves and for our children. We talk about the importance of showing up for ourselves as mothers and finding our own passions and what lights us up. I really love this inspiring conversation, and I'm sure that you will too. Here it is. Welcome to the Parenting Wisdom Podcast. Today I have Julia Black with us, and I'm so excited about this conversation because I heard about your work probably a year and a half ago when I interviewed somebody from your community, the Lights On community, Rachel Pattison. And it was such an amazing episode. And I just love the concept of your community. And I would love to hear more from you. Start by just introducing yourself, telling us a little bit about who you are and what you want to share with us.
Yeah, so I'm a mother to 2 young adults now. So my daughter is 21 and my son is 19. And I'm an author, an entrepreneur, and a changemaker spirit. That's how I guess I really think about myself. I kind of always knew I was here for a reason. And I spent a lot of my childhood kind of trying to figure out what is it I'm here to do. And it wasn't really until I was 40 that I really discovered that. And that was when I was sort of sitting backstage of this big top circus that me and 2 others had directed at my children's school. People shine. That's what I'm here. We'd trained, we'd kind of got all 106 children in the school to appear in this big top circus, and everyone really rose to the challenge. And that's really when I kind of locked in and started my quest to really, I guess, crack the code of human flourishing. So that's where I'm at now. It feels a long time ago. It's been a beautiful journey of ups and downs, of light and dark. But I've ended up with what my framework, my philosophy approach to learning and living, really, which is called Lights On. And I have this tool that really the way to think about it is a self-awareness and calibration tool that allows us as human beings to be able to attune to our radiance through choice, not circumstance. So yes, I didn't expect to find myself here as an educator or someone who, has been so excited to dive into our human potential. But that's where I find myself.
That's awesome. It's interesting that you say that you started this journey when you turned around age 40. And I think I hear people saying, I don't know if it's like common knowledge or not, but I hear people saying that real life actually starts at 40 because up until then, you're kind of searching yourself, trying to figure out the world. And then at 40, you really start to shine and bring your light to the world. So I think that's really interesting. So can you tell us a little bit what you were before that?
Yeah, so before that, I was a documentary maker. I got a BAFTA and a Grierson nomination for my documentary, and I kind of explored current affairs and social issues, and also a lot around young mental health. So that was when I thought, oh, I found my thing. It's not that I have to decide on a particular subject or topic or theme to go in, but I can use my filmmaking. I'm a storyteller, really, is what I am. I can use my passion for telling stories to help people question, I guess, their own views and challenge their beliefs around things. And then when I became a mother, it was all right still juggling both with my daughter. But when I had my son, I was then faced as a mother of a 3-year-old and a newborn. And that's when I guess I began to really kind of think, actually, which one am I going to choose? You know, I guess sometimes we feel, well, certainly I feel as a woman that I was told I could have it all. And I think that was really when I was with a newborn and a 3-year-old, realizing that actually what's going to be more important to me, to go on and potentially win the BAFTAs and get the awards and make lots of documentaries, but be away from my children, or when I'm 80, look back and think of all the memories that I've had with my children. And so I chose motherhood, to stay at home and be with them. And for quite a while, I still thought of myself or described myself as a filmmaker until sort of, a few years in, and I realized I had to sort of wake myself up and go, okay, I'm not really a filmmaker anymore. I'm not making films. And that threw me a little bit into an identity crisis, I guess, of like, well, who am I then? You know, and my saving grace, I guess, when I look back now, was the fact that when my daughter started school at age 4, that we start here in the UK, she became very bored and frustrated. And that's when I kind of started getting involved in the school community, and all that energy, creative energy of directing and storytelling, I just poured into this school, and we mobilized the whole parent community, and we just brought out the talents of the children. So I think, yeah, before what I do now, I was a filmmaker, but I think probably always I've been a storyteller.
Mm. I love that. I have actually a very similar story. When we moved here to the States, I was sure that I'm going to do a PhD. And I actually studied for the GREs, and I had this dream to have a PhD in sociology. But then I got pregnant with my second son. And I started asking myself, how would that life look like for me? And I knew that the academic world is going to be very, very demanding. And it means that I'm going to have to be very, I'm going to have to be in my room during the weekends. I won't be able to pick them up from school. And I just realized that's not what I wanted. So I made the shift. It took a few years to understand what I really want to do, but I took that energy of loving to learn and loving to teach, and I directed it elsewhere. So I started unschooling the kids. And when I started that journey of unschooling, I dove so deeply into the literature, and I just enjoyed the learning of it. And in time, I also started talking about it a lot. And this podcast is actually one of the ways where I can publish my thoughts or share my
Right.
thoughts publicly, not as a academic paper, but
Mm.
as just an outlet for my thoughts and for my views and for what I've learned in just a different way. So I feel like it's a very
Um,
story.
yeah, and obviously we share a passion for learning and a love for learning, and I think that for me has been the most surprising thing for me, because I never went into it thinking, oh, I'll become an educator, but I've got this educational framework, and I've got this vision of a world where all children love learning. And I truly believe that we as parents should what I call flex the system to work for the children. And so it's not, I've done it always. I had my children in school. I had flexi schooling. I had them out of school. We had a trip to Canada for about 9 months, so unschooled. And it was there really that I saw how alive my 2K, and they were 5 and 7 at that time. And they really became alive and led their learning, and yeah, projects on the go. And it was this hungry, curious kind of desire in them to learn. So, yeah. And so for me to then find myself kind of getting so involved in education has been a surprise. So I often say I'm an accidental educationalist, because it wasn't like a passion of mine, but the quest of seeing people light up, the quest of seeing, well, what does it take for us to shine, has just kind of taken a grip on me, and that's where I'm at now. But it's, yeah, very similar to where you are, making that choice as a mother, to be present as a mother, but then still wanting to find a way to creatively express myself. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that because it shows that you can have it all, right? But it doesn't have to look a certain way. It can look your way, just your specific way, your family specific way. But it doesn't have to be a choice between motherhood or yourself. It can be both in a way that, and you have to think a little bit outside of the box and be creative in order for it to work. But it can work. I think listening to our stories can be very inspiring for women who find that they are maybe frustrated because they can't find that balance. So can you start by telling us how you created your community? How did it all start? And just a little bit about the community. In short, because I did talk in depth about this with Rachel, and I
Yeah.
actually wanna focus on other things with you. But tell us a little bit about the community.
Yeah, so we've got an online community of mothers. I used to, back in 2013, I opened up my own creative learning center. And so I was working directly with the children then, and I had, thousands come through my doors over the about 3 to 4 years. But what I began to realize is that actually, whilst I can transform children from disengaged to engaged, what really matters is what happens in the home and the culture of learning and the love of learning or not within the home. And so I decided to go online back in 2018 and really focus in on getting my tools and my strategies into the homes. And what then became very interesting was that even how simple I'd made them, there was still this block, and that actually the mothers struggled to have some of the conversations or implement some of the tools. And so that kind of got me really interested in working with the mothers directly on their growth. So this whole belief, if they shine, their family will shine. And that's when I really began to realize, I'm here to help mothers lead their families in an inspiring way and to bridge that gap between the old paradigm of learning, where it's like a set rule, this is how we do things and this is the success path, into the new paradigm, which is heart set, mindset, and skill set. Really lead from the things that light us up. And, and I always say, our hearts will always dream bigger than our heads are ready for. So when we lead with that thing that we're here to explore and express, and a gift that I believe we all have, then the mindset will grow as it needs to grow because the heart won't be silenced. And so that's really what we are. We're a community of parents like you've met Rachel, who are courageously vulnerable. They show up knowing that their growth matters for their health and the flourishing of their family.
It's awesome. Can you explain a little bit the terminology of lights on and lights off and the whole spectrum that you have in between?
Yes. So this came in 2016. I had my centers, and I got a center on a school site, a secondary school site. And I was talking with a business strategist and said, I want to find a way, because I don't believe in assessments and constant testing or anything like that. And my approach to learning wasn't academic anyway. It was all project based, or is project based. And so I was talking to the business strategist. I want to find a way for me and the team to really know when we're kind of getting it right, when we as a team are excelling. And he said, well, how do you know? And I was like, well, you see it. You see it in their eyes. It's like their lights have come on. And he said, well, there you go, lights on, lights off. And it was the simplicity of that. And the fact that I'd been saying for years, like, we're looking for that moment when the kids' lights come on, that just really kicked in. And so back then, 2016, it kind of was this metric because we could see it. And I asked people, well, do you understand what it means to be lights on? And I actually worked with a group of 13-year-olds. We had about 80, I think about 84 come through my center in one day. And we did this project where we defined what lights on means to them, and what lights off means. So lights on being, joyful, happy, feeling, abundant, in flow, that kind of thing, fulfilled. Lights off being frustrated and angry and disappointed or bored. And then I asked them to, as they're leaving, to put onto this app that a 16-year-old had done a prototype of for the school day. Do they believe they are more lights on or lights off overall? And the results were really interesting because not only did the children understand the concept, because it's a very simple concept, obviously, and we know, and it's very empowering to know, but there were 52 that said on the whole they were lights on, So they were like enjoying school, switched on to learning. But 48% said they were lights off. And back then, I thought that was the problem. I thought, oh, the disengagement is what we have to fix. But now, what I know, fast forward with understanding the science of human potential, I understand how important being lights off is for learning and growth. And this is now where I look and go, well, disengagement is not a problem at all. We make it a problem when we start saying, oh, my child has anxiety or my child hates school. We start labeling what's just a very normal human response to being bored. Yeah, let's face it, sitting in a classroom for 6 hours a day, 5 days a week is pretty boring for most of us, right? Some children, and mostly neurotypical children, can sit there, mostly girls would sit there and go through it. But I had a daughter who was a high achiever, very articulate, neurotypical, from whom I could see it was crushing. And so when we use this language, lights on, lights off, we were able to get a very different picture than an academic picture, because a lot of the high achievers I talked to were lights off. They were bored. They could do whatever the school asked them to do, and they'd learnt the hoops to jump over. So that I began to kind of really dive into this and then look at the science behind it, understand the science of emotions. I became a neurocoach. So I understand the neurobiology, how we rewire our brains, how we can use our heart's intelligence and our regulate our nervous system. And as I began to dive into it, I realized that more and more and more, the simplicity of being lights on or lights off was incredibly powerful for us to be able to show up to learn and grow through conscious choice rather than circumstance. So is the system broken? It's certainly out of date, but I've worked with children who are extremely disengaged and not functioning in school. And we switch their lights back on, they get empowered, they take ownership, and they go back into the exact same classroom, able to learn. And they transform the academic results that they get. So we started then, fast forward again, we started with the community online. A group of mothers agreed to track their lights on status with me. And that's when we really began to realize the binary, lights on and lights off, was too limiting, because it's in reality, we're not one or the other. We fluctuate between the two. And actually that fluid and dynamic movement is really important, because being lights off gives us a signal where our edges are, where our limiting beliefs are, when we're telling ourselves we're stupid, we can't do this is too hard. And so it gives us clues and signals of where we can rewire to stack the evidence of, well, if I keep going and don't give up, maybe I can. So we can switch back into lights on. And what we really felt as a group of mothers was that 6 signatures is what I've ended up calling them, felt right. 3 lights off, so darkness, dimness, and glimmer, and then 3 lights on signatures, glow, brilliance, and radiance. And then what's become fascinating as we begin to use it as a tool is that depending on what we need to achieve for the day, we can consciously choose the signature that's going to get us the best results. And that's where it gets exciting, is that actually when we connect with our radiance, for me, radiance is like the natural essence within us. It's not something that's out of our grasp. It's something within us to discover again. And one of the mums, Viv, talked about it being, it's like a remembering of who I am. So it's kind of like a coming home. But what has been beautiful is to see how the mothers, when they first join and start learning the tools, they aren't connected with their radiance. Maybe they're at glow at the most. So they're in lights on, but they're in a comfort zone and they're not really feeling fulfilled, certainly not flourishing on a regular basis. And as they begin to connect with radiance, it's just beautiful to see, because now they're able to cascade into darkness, but it not become doom and gloom. It's just like, oh, this is where I am. What's the lesson for me here? And they're holding that darkness with it for themselves with compassion and love. So I'm excited because I feel like actually, if we learn to use our human technology that we've been given, which is really powerful, we can consciously choose how we show up in our lives and the impact that we have on everyone around us. And when a mother does that for her family, it literally transforms the opportunities really available to her children.
I absolutely love that. And I love that the way that you frame this is from a place of choice, right? We have a
Mm,
choice. And I think that that is very different from the, I think, pretty popular mindset of victimhood that we are currently feeling in our society, and especially around kids, because we have this epidemic of anxiety and depression
mm,
around for children and teenagers. And I think really much of it is because we are looking at it from from this mental framework and thinking that this is a problem that needs to be solved. But actually, if we look at it and try to understand it and look at it as an opportunity, how we
yeah.
can grow from it and how we can choose to view our life differently, it can empower those children. And maybe some of them are anxious and depressed. I'm not saying
Mm,
that that's not a thing. It is definitely a thing. But I truly believe that majority of those children just don't have the meaning in their life to step out of that mental state that they're in. And I think that
100%.
it's so important to talk about that idea of choice. Like, you have a choice. You don't have to be in this mental state. And we as parents can teach our children those tools on how to step out of that mental state and come into the lights on shades of gray that you're talking about. And yeah, and I love the idea of doing it yourself as a mother, because when you do it yourself as a mother, then you can be the guide for your children. You cannot guide your children on something that you didn't experience yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the science behind it is also really important, because I talk about us as mothers setting the energetic tone for our family. And actually, when we're in radiance, you can see it and you can feel it. And, the science of brain to brain synchrony is our children will then start in training to where we are. And I think this is the hardest thing for mothers and parents, and even educators actually, but is that sometimes what happens when our children's lights go off, or when they disengage, when they become unhappy or they don't want to go to school, is that we can go into the doom and gloom. Our negativity bias goes like, oh no, and so we join them down there with lights off. We cascade with them. And as soon as we are in lights off mode, we start looking for problems. And again, we're looking through a lack lens. We're looking at what is wrong, and then we start shining the spotlight on what is wrong with them. And so it's exactly what you're talking about. And it's just like, what is wrong with them? And then they're hearing these conversations. What's wrong with you? Why can't you just go to school like all the other kids? What is wrong with you? Why can't you just sit there and do your homework for 10 minutes? And then the parent teacher conversations, which is, I don't know what's wrong. They're a smart kid. They should be doing better. So all of this shoulds and the negativity and the limiting beliefs that we as adults carry get passed on. And now you've got the child going like, well, yeah, maybe there is something wrong with me because I don't feel great. And when I talk to kids, or when we talk to children or parents talk to their children, they say, I'm lost, I'm lonely, I'm sad, and I think I'm rubbish, my brain doesn't work. And so with all of that thinking and those emotions that go with those neural networks, of course your lights off, of course you're going to disengage, because it's a safety net, because you don't want to show up like fully going on unless you've got a really good mindset and still be failing if you think you're rubbish. So this again is where the mindset work is really important. For me, not until you've got the heart set in place. And this is the mistake I see lots of educators make and parents make, is they try to work on the mindset. Well, just try harder. Of course you can. No, I can't. Yes, you can. No, I can't. And then what that does is just embed this belief that my parent believes in me, but I don't believe in me. But when the heart set is activated, the desire and the motivation is now intrinsic. And so then it becomes like, it doesn't really matter that I'm failing at school because I know what I'm really good at. And I've just got to jump these hurdles. So one of the things I think we can do as a parent, whether we're home educating or got kids in school, is be really careful where our own thinking goes when our children start becoming lights off, and do the work to hold space from that radiance, from that space of being lights on, so that we sit and listen with love and compassion rather than go into judgment mode. And start looking for why. You know, when you, as a neurocoach, when you really leave the situation or the circumstances, you know, outside the room and you look at why, it's just like, I'm thinking I'm rubbish. Of course I don't feel great. Of course I don't want to put my hands up or do the work that my mum's asking me to do because I don't believe I can do it. And it's just so inspiring when you look and work with children or teenagers or adults with this work and you realize how would that shift if you believed in the possibility that you could, you know, but they have to have that. They have to have that and want to do it and take full ownership of it. And that's where, like you're talking about, the choice comes in. Because if a child doesn't really care about reading, then wait until they care about reading. You know, if a child doesn't want to learn, I mean, you know, their sevens times tables, wait until they do or they're bothered. But in my experience, when you give a child the choice, and I'm just thinking here of one 7-year-old boy, and I was working with his mother, and she was like, he's doing all his letters. She was home educating. So she had that self-judgment that, "Oh, children his age at school are doing all of this. And my child is still writing the numbers back to front." And I just said, well, just ask him, does it bother him? Does he want to learn to write the numbers in the way that, you know, we write them? And she came back and said, yes, he does. And so now he can drive and take ownership of that. And she can let go, not needing to be her thing that she wants him to do. Actually, he wanted to do it. And he turned it around really quickly because we looked at what his heart set was and his passion, which was like lining all his soldiers up and thinking strategy and, you know, designing games. And then I said to him, okay, well, if you do want to learn to do your numbers, like come up with a strategy that's going to motivate you. And he designed this whole game, you know, to self-motivate and to do it. So what I love about this work, and it's obviously where you are in your passion as well, is none of this is rocket science. It's kind of real common sense. But sometimes we leave our common sense out thinking, well, I'm just a parent. I'm not an educator. What do I know? But actually, that's why I'm a massive advocate for mothers really powering up themselves, because we are the best person for our children to become the best that they can be and how they want to show up in the world, because we care more than anyone else, you know, and fathers too. But I work really exclusively with mothers because I've seen the massive impact that that has.
Yeah. And I think it's a matter of whose responsibility is it, right? Like the responsibility for learning is upon the person who is learning. It
Yes.
cannot never come from the outside. And I've seen this with my children along the way, because in the beginning, when we were unschooling, I was so worried. And I tried to adopt the whole unschooling worldview and let go, but I still had a lot of worries inside of me. And my son, who was then, I mean, we started when he was 4 and up until
Yes.
he was 9 years old. But he only learned to read when he was around 8, 9, something like that. And it took me, it was really hard to let that go. But when he wanted to learn how to read, it just went so quickly and easily, and he got it with no problem. And I didn't have to struggle with at all. Like he wanted to sit, he wanted to do the lessons with me, and we did it, and it was joyful. And now it's the same with Hebrew, where
Mm.
he really wants to learn how to read and write in Hebrew. Like it's coming from him. So I'm sitting with him, and he's the one who is pushing for the lessons to happen. It's not coming from me, because it's his passion and it's his responsibility. I can never take responsibility for his learning. And I
Yes.
think it's even, for parents whose kids are in school, it's not your responsibility for their learning or for them doing homework or learning for a test. It's their responsibility. Maybe as you say, you can ask them, is it important for you to succeed in this test? Isn't it important for you to have homework? If it is, then how can you make it work on your terms? When is the good time for you to do this? Do you need me to intervene? Do you need me to remind you? Can I assist you in what is eventually your work, but it's eventually not the parent's responsibility? And I think that
Yeah.
can be very freeing, just to think about it like that.
100%. And I'm just thinking, I'm smiling because I'm thinking of this one mum who phoned me going, Julia, like, it's taking us 3 hours to do his homework. Every night I'm like, well, why are you doing his homework? Drop it. And let him face the consequences of either doing it or not doing it. And that's what happened for my son. My son was out of school from 7 and both my children chose to go back in at 11 to start what is our secondary school system here. And and when he got to secondary school, from being a very, very motivated learner with the home learning and through my creative learning center, and high level of skill with communication and digital skills and everything, he very quickly learned that the homework was a tick box and that the teachers didn't really read it. They didn't really care. And so he said, I'm not going to do it. And I said, okay, that's fine. You just got to, what are the consequences of you not doing it? And you've just got to be okay that, if it's what we would call a detention here, you do the detention. He said, well, I'd rather have a 15-minute detention than do a homework that nobody's going to look at. And so he chose that, and I fully supported him. And actually, I don't think he ever did get the detentions, which again shows that this threat of, punishment is not the right approach to get our children to learn. And I think one of the problems that we've got at the moment, and I do think this comes from parents, because I know teachers are incredibly frustrated with this, is that we kind of pick the child up from the driving seat and we put them in the back seat. And we tell them where they're going to go, and we say how fast they've got to drive, which route they've got to go. And then we're surprised when they're having a paddy in the back going, I don't want to go here. Or when they're like disengaged and looking out the window, staring into distance, or on their screens consuming the whole time. But when you empower children, as you know, to create, so that's part of my model, is always the right, in order for us to know what's in a child's heart and mind and skills, heart set, mindset, and skill set, we want to see a tangible manifestation of what they are capable of achieving. And this is why I think, again, it's so exciting, because when we see a child creating and making something in physical form, it could be digital, it could be a painting or anything, even a dance or playing with maths or writing a script, we then know where they are. And then what we're looking for is like, are they growing over time? And that's when it gets exciting, because when you bring a little bit of structure, so I'm a big fan of learning, having freedom, but creative structure so that the creativity can really flourish. And I learned this the hard way with my center, because I've had hundreds of kids come through, or thousands in the end, but right in the early days. And I saw how when there was no boundaries, no structure, the children were lost. And it wasn't that they were unhappy, but from my perspective of someone who had become already quite obsessive about learning and the beauty and how natural it is to us as breathing, I could see that they weren't really getting any feedback and evidence of what they were capable of. And that to me is what fulfillment is. It's when we hit the struggle and when we want to give up, but we don't. We keep on going, not through pushing or pulling or squeezing, but through the belief that at the other side of this challenge, there's the curve, there's the learning that's going to happen. And so that for me is really what being fulfilled means. It's just like that sense of achievement, not because it came easy, but because I actually had to learn and grow and maybe cry and want to give up. And I didn't. And I now know, gosh, if I can achieve this, imagine what I could achieve next. And that's just natural in us as human beings. And we're closing it off.
Absolutely. Do you think that there is something spiritual in this? Because when I hear you talking, what comes into my mind is people who go through very hard challenges. And what holds them in those challenges is the belief that there is a reason for that challenge, that they're going through this hardship because they are put here on this world to overcome it for some kind of reason that maybe they don't know right now, but it's a path that is for them. And there is something spiritual in that. It's a belief and something that you cannot explain, right? And some people call it God. Some people think that this is what God intended for them, and they pray for God and they talk with God. But that belief, having to put your power in a way outside of yourself or in an outer source, and gain your inner power from that.
Yes.
Yeah. So is
Yeah,
this
one.
spiritual for it in like in the way that you see it?
Yes, I think of learning, lights on learning being the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual connection. And for me, it's really opens up with radiance, because when we tune into our radiance, that's when that sense of oneness comes to us. And so I really kind of sort of see with the parents that I work with, the spiritual awakening happens when they connect with radiance, because it is almost like a disappear and I become almost like a channel and things flow through me and to me, which for me is where I am at with my spiritual journey. It's just like I don't have a religion, but I believe in, I guess, a universal energy, and that sense of everything is unfolding for me, which is what you're speaking to, really is felt when we're tuning into radiance. And I think so, I guess where I'm at on my journey is there's the human potential and then there's the soul potential. And for me, radiance, once we're like really tuning into that through choice and on a more regular basis, we are beginning to tune much more into, well, what am I here to do? And it no longer need to know from our mind perspective, which is the thing most of my life I was asking, like, what am I meant to do? Maybe it's this or that or this. But it's now just this inner knowing, and you're tuning into your intuition. And that's when the beautiful coincidences happen and serendipity comes into play and things start unfolding. And when I look at my own life, when I've been on the right path, for me, things have been really, the right thing comes in at the right time. Even sometimes, and you must have had this, and I'm sure many of your listeners, you think like, oh, I'm going to read this book, and you open it randomly, and you read the page, and it's just like, I, that's exactly what I needed to hear, and it clicks in, and that's what I like to talk about. It goes from knowledge to knowing. Once we've got a knowing, it never leaves us. And that to me is where the growth happens. And that does feel spiritual and it feels guided and it feels absolutely sovereign, that it's my personal power being fully expressed in the bigger scheme of things.
Yes. And it gives you that deep sense of meaning and purpose, which can help you overcome any challenge that you have. It doesn't matter what it is. But once you have that deep sense of meaning, that you're on some kind of path and you're led by something, and you can just let reality unfold the way it needs to fold, and you can, in a way, let go of control and just surrender, exactly, surrender and just ride the waves of life and enjoy it.
Yes, and I think what's exciting about that is this, lights on learning, it does require a, a consciousness, a certain level of consciousness to really be able to understand it and to playfully in the realm of it. And so when you're not there, it's very hard to trust that. But when you are there and when you start getting evidence and feedback that, oh, I'm playing in this realm now,
Mhm.
the trust, well, it's not that you even need trust. You have the faith, I guess, is where it shifts to a faith.
That's beautiful. So, can you tell us about your latest program? I saw that you have some kind of new program that you're launching or maybe launched already.
Yeah, so I have, well, the main place that I really want to encourage more mums to come into is Lights on Families. And what I'm doing at the moment is every month doing masterclasses. So I'm really tuning in to the fact that we as mothers, I believe, will be the ones that change the world. We are the leaders of the next generation. And I'm really tuning into this identity of the strong female lead. Most recently, I've kind of reclaimed my passion for dressing up and living life as though I was in a musical. And it feels like this beautiful connection with my childlike self. And so, and as a filmmaker as well, this idea that, when we become strong female leads of our family, we are showing up in our own spotlight. We're not in the shadows, letting our children do it all. We are there leading the way and showing our children, this is what it looks like when you follow your heart. This is what it looks like when you step into your dream. This is what it looks like when you put yourself on the line and become courageously vulnerable. And it's not all pretty. Sometimes I'm angry, or sometimes I'm frustrated, or sometimes I'm crying. And so that's really now the work that I'm wanting to do. And we're doing these monthly masterclasses so mothers can come along and just see, like, do I gel with them? Does the idea of being surrounded by mothers who are doing this work, because they're an inspiring group of mothers, and are they ready? Because I expect, as you know, like, you have to be ready to learn in this way. The old school model's really easy. Sit back, complain, and be passive. And yeah, let's throw a little bit of victimhood on. But this way, it's just like, actually, if this is my choice and it is about my inner power and tuning into that, and I take ownership of how I show up in my life, I've got to face some truths about myself and walk through some darkness. But that's okay, because there is a path. So yeah, so anyone who wants to find out more, probably the best place to find me is Lights on Mum, and that will have regular details of what we're doing.
That's awesome. I will definitely link that in the show notes. So thank you so much, Julia. This was such an inspiring conversation, and I really resonate with everything that you just said. And I hope many people join your masterclass and get this information, because it really can change our world for the better. I truly, truly believe in that.
100%. It just think, when we really truly know as mothers the impact of our mental well-being, and if we shine, our family shines too, then it radiates out from us through our family to our communities.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much, Julia.